So I was coaching a client and the client asked me, what is the big difference between dismissive avoidance and fearful avoidance? And I gave my best take on what I felt the situation was that he was in. He kind of had this light bulb moment where he was like, wow, I can't believe that the whole time I was binge watching a lot of these dismissive videos, it's starting to look more like this person is a fearful avoidant based on some of the things that they were seeing and some of the things that I was telling them about, you know, what you will see in these different type of attachments. So I thought this was the perfect time to give you guys a video about what are the differences between the dismissive avoidant and the fearful avoidant. And I'm going to give you 5 of those right here, right now. Thank you for sticking around. If this is your first time viewing me, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel by clicking that subscribe button and ringing that bell so you're notified for all my newest coaching content. This question was brought to me in my test texting community from a person that is part of the group. What is the big difference between a dismissive avoidant and a fearful avoidant? I got my list right here, so if I'm looking down, pardon me, I want to make sure that I'm being impeccable with my word. The first thing is the dismissive avoidant trusts their judgment over other people's judgment. So they know what's best for them and for their life. And that's the total opposite of someone who's anxious or someone who's even a fearful avoidant. The fearful avoidant tends to be more open-minded. They're more open about change. They're more open about having adventures. This is something that, you know, dismissive avoidants, they typically don't like change. But the fearful avoidant, they do like change. They actually embrace it. I was coaching someone and they were telling me about how they like to constantly be having new adventures, constantly traveling and doing different things. That is a big difference from a dismissive avoidant. Dismissives tend to be more introverted. Not all the time. This isn't law, of course, but they tend to be more introversive and they don't like to have things sprung on them at the last minute. Like they won't just hop up and go on an adventure like a fearful avoidant. The second thing is the dismissive avoidant, they easily feel criticized. That's the total difference of someone who is more fearful avoidant, because fearful avoidants have that anxious part of them. They are willing to make change. They're open for someone to come in and teach them a better way of doing things. Now they will use their own discretion. That's that dismissive part. When I see the anxious preoccupied person is, you know, they kind of live in another person's shadow. They want to be exactly like, they want to engulf all of their belief systems, even appearance, their speech, their food, their friend circle, they want to embrace. But for a dismissive person, that's not how they operate. But let's say that you do have a relationship with someone, you were able to figure out, you know, their history, the things that they experienced in life, the things that they've disclosed to you that they never necessarily disclosed to anyone else. The third difference is the dismissive person were more likely to have that background of neglect, meaning that they didn't have a parent that was able to be there for them emotionally, maybe even physically. So that's one key difference, is the fearful avoidant had that, but it was really inconsistent. Just like the anxious preoccupied, it was really inconsistent. Or they may have had, you know, I talked about this on a previous video, more ACEs than the average person. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with ACEs, look up the adverse childhood experiences. It's a 10-question quiz where you can take and just kind of figure out where you had some type of trauma in your life, you know, trauma being something that happened to you that shouldn't have and things that should have happened to you that didn't. That's where the ACEs come in, and you'll be surprised at how many people have more ACEs than they actually realize, because most of us tend to repress it, and we feel like since we survived this environment, since we survived this upbringing, we're okay. It worked out for us. But when I actually learned about it in the training that I was in, it was a lot more people in the room that was raising their hands than not. So it's interesting. Go ahead and check that out. The fourth difference, they're rarely hot. The dismissive avoidants won't be that hot. You know, in the beginning, they may have been someone that was pursuing you. They, you know, it was a fresh feeling. They were someone who was wanting to get to know you better. But it's really hard for them to sustain throughout the relationship, especially when the honeymoon phase has ended. But the fearful avoidant, they'll be hot, they'll be cold. They'll have a great weekend with you one weekend, then pull back. You may have said something to them. Out of all the attachment, the fearful avoidants tend to ruminate over things really, really deeply. And they may be, you know, a little bit upset about something that happened in like a past interaction that you guys have had. Maybe you said something that was a little bit offbeat, something that made them feel like, all right, maybe this person is a cheater or something. Maybe this person isn't someone that I can truly trust. And the dismissive person, what they will do is they'll take space. If you say something on a date, even if you guys have been dating for a while, they'll take that space, but they won't come to you and talk about it. They'll just kind of cool themselves off and then may warm back up to you. But the fearful avoidant, what they will do is they'll back off, and it may just like fester for a while, but they will come out and say what they feel. If not someone who's leaning more of anxious, they'll tell you right away. If it was something that happened in a relationship, like take the saying something wrong on a date or saying something that was a little bit offbeat, they will say something. They're leaning anxious. For them, holding that emotion in, it feels like their skin's crawling. They need to say it. This is the anxious part. And they need to get it out. They feel suffocated if they can't get it out. But the avoidant will pull back. And that's where that hot and cold comes in, where you just don't quite know where they're at, because you never know how they're going to interpret certain things, or really need some time to think about the different interactions that you guys have. The fifth one is going to be debatable, right? But I'm going to say it anyway, right? I'm going to say it anyway. The fifth one is a dismissive avoidant will leave a relationship, right? When they don't have the feelings for you anymore, when they feel like the relationship has ran its course, they will leave the relationship, all right? They will exit it, and that may look like them just disappearing, them saying, all right, this isn't working out. I don't think this is the relationship for me, or I can't meet your needs, and then they'll pull back and then they will leave the relationship. But for the fearful avoidant, I've seen them stuck in dynamics for a really long time where they'll leave and then they'll come back. They'll take a 6-month break and then they'll come back, and they'll have like these situations just with other people, but then they'll go back to that other person. I've seen this happen for like 5 and 10 years sometimes, where they'll be in a relationship with another fearful avoidant, and it's kind of like the Mexican standoff. One person's holding and they don't know if the other person's going to move, so they hold out a little bit longer. But then when they come back together, it's a really strong and intense relationship, only for it to fizzle out later, or for something to happen. Fearful avoidants tend to have that more volatile personality where they will like snap on you. They will say some things that was a little bit cutting, a little sharp with the tongue. I've seen that they have had some upbringings where this was kind of the norm, whether it was the community they were in or the family they were living in. This is kind of how they operated. So once again, the dismissive will leave the relationship, and the fearful avoidant, they'll leave, but they'll come back, and they tend to be in these situations just for really long periods of time, unless the relationship was something that was really short-lived. So let's go ahead and do conditional here. So if it was a relationship that was for over a year for dismissive, they may stick around longer, like, because like I said, they don't like change very much. They get comfortable and they get familiar with the person. This is why a lot of people started complaining about how dismissive people won't leave them, but they just kind of just not show up for them. And it's because if it was a relationship where they felt like they got trust with you, they built that trust, they built that rapport, they will stick with you for until you leave them, or until you complain enough, or until you feel like your needs aren't met enough, or you just feel like the relationship is just not working out for you. But the fearful avoidant, if it's a relationship that has been over a year, they tend to come back and forth. They tend to go and come and go more often. But if it was under a year, they may leave the relationship. I'm not gonna lie to you. They may leave the relationship and say that this just isn't for them. So if you found this video of any value, please like, comment, and share. Reach out to me on my other social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as I am Coach Court. Thank you guys. Always remember, when you go be loved, you'll never have to find it.